What's up guys, it's Ryan and you're watching Ryan Vision. If you haven't already, make sure you like the video and subscribe for more. Got a couple updates for you today on Project ZJ. The first one I'm going to go through is the Rock Offroad rear long arm. Basically, I got the full kit, came a while ago. I know some of you guys have been eager for updates on it. So far all I've been able to do is install the rear subframe. Managed to do this by myself, so you can do this alone as long as you have a nice jack and a decent sized piece of wood. And basically what I did was got this thing jacked up to the uniframe, and what they say in the instructions is to get the subframe mashed up against the stock lower control arm mount as close as you can, and then just center it up from left to right and also from front to back on both sides. Just make sure it's nice and square, dead even on both sides. So I jacked it up with a piece of wood and got it up there, got it lined up, and then just left it up there. Once I got it situated, you know, basically I put some pressure on with the jack and then used my fist or even a small hammer to kind of bump it into place so it's perfect on each side. And then once I was happy where it was, I put some more pressure on the jack so both sides went up to the frame, because basically I had the wood, you see this square piece right here, I had the wood under here, and if you jack it up, it'll actually jack both sides up. Now I did it, you know, if you follow the instructions, they tell you to do it all at once and take these control arms off and everything like that. I'm doing it in two separate phases. Basically right now I'm still on my short arms in the rear. I just got the subframe on there, and now I'm waiting for my buddy to come over and help me get all the control arms in there, because I'm not sure this axle is kind of pushed forward because of these short arms. There's a lot of tension on the springs, so I definitely want someone else with me when we take these off so we can easily get the bolt holes lined up when I put the long arms on. So anyways, jacked it up, put enough pressure on it that even though I only jacked right here, it also lifted this side firmly into place. And once it was in place and I was happy with the positioning, I left it there and used it as a template to drill the holes. So I drilled, there's 6 holes on each side, and drilled those out. And then the way it secures to the frame is there's nut plates. So basically there's a thick plate of steel, and each plate of steel goes to 2 bolt holes. So there's a nut plate connecting these two, and these two together. And so that was the only kind of tricky part, is you had to fish those nut plates into the frame. And you know, there's holes to do that. I actually cut a little rectangle on the frame because I plan to later do custom rock sliders, and when I do that I'm going to box this whole frame rail in with some 4x4 1/4-inch thick steel. And the beauty in the Rock Offroad kit is you can see that they allow you some extra space to do things like that. You know, if you're running frame stiffeners or you do box the frame in with some 1/4-inch, they give you some room there on the subframe to do that kind of thing. So it's an awesome kit, and I gotta say that the sorry if it's a little windy, I can feel the breeze picking up, and I know my microphone's probably getting it, but you know, the nut plates kind of scared me. I was like, well, God, you know, how am I going to get these in the frame, number one? And then once I get them in there, how am I going to thread these bolts in there without just pushing them up into the frame and knocking them out of position? And I gotta say, it was actually a lot easier than I thought. Once I got all the holes drilled, I lowered the subframe back down, and I just started fishing the nut plates in and getting them lined up. And the best way I found to do it was push a nut plate in, and you know, I had cut a little access hole. You can see you've got existing holes here that would work, but I had cut a little access hole back here somewhere, because that's another thing. There's I want to say it's this bolt. It's one of these bolt holes toward the rear, and you'll notice that there's an existing factory hole in the frame, but it's not a drilled hole, it's more of like a pressed in hole. And so what I mean by that is, like, if you imagine inside the frame, there's actually like a lip on the inside, so you can't bang it down with a hammer or anything, and that lip needed to go away in order for the nut plate to work. So what I did was I cut a little square or a little rectangle around that pressed in hole, so that, you know, number one, I was getting rid of that lip going up into the frame so the nut plate would sit flush and make full contact with the inside of the frame rail. And number two, what I was doing is I was giving myself an even easier access hole to fish the nut plates in. So once I got the nut plate in back here, I fished it forward, and what I did was just through the existing bolt holes that I had already drilled, I used 2 screwdrivers, and when I would see the nut plate, you know, one of the holes, I'd kind of fish it down, and I'd get my finger in anywhere I could. You know, you can get your finger in here, and just fished it forward. And then once I got it to where it needed to be, I used 2 screwdrivers to align it. And then what I did was, let's say I was working on this bolt, so I had the nut plate lined up, 2 holes here, you know, a hole here and a hole here, and I wanted to get this bolt in. I stuck a screwdriver through this hole to kind of hold it in place, and then what I did was I just carefully brought the bolt up to the nut plate while I was twisting it to the right. So basically, as soon as it made contact with the tapered hole, it started threading, and once I caught just the slightest bit of thread to where I could let go and it was holding itself, that was all I needed. Then I could pull the screwdriver out of this hole, so that hole's now accessible for a bolt, and I could hold this one and kind of rotate it left and right since it was threaded in to make sure that this hole was lined up with the hole I drilled. And then same thing, while I'm holding this one, lightly push this one up while I'm tightening it so it catches thread, and once they both catch thread, you're golden, you're good to go. So I just did that on all 3 nut plates on this side, got them all threaded in just loosely, and once they were all threaded in to where, you know, I could actually get a ratchet and tighten this one while this bolt would hold the plate from rotating, then I just barely snugged it up, snugged them all up, and I went over to the other side and did the exact same thing. Once I had them all snugged up pretty good, I went back around with just a regular ratchet, snugged them up to the frame, and then came back around with a torque wrench and torqued them to spec, which I believe was 65 foot-pounds for all of them, and then lowered the jack, and this baby is on there, and it is solid. And you can see that for the lower control arm mount, you have 2 mounting positions here. Also, the lower control arm itself is adjustable. The flex joints go down here on the axle side. So I'll show you all this when I get the control arms installed, but just kind of letting you know all the possibilities with this awesome subframe from Rock Offroad. And then the uppers, let me see if I can lay under here and give you a better view. The upper control arms, they give you a lot of mounting positions too. And this is really thick steel, so I know the holes look kind of close together, but I really don't think it's an issue. The main point of the upper control arm is to maintain the pinion angle, basically the angle of the axle back here, tipping forward or rolling back. So they tell you in the instructions which one to start with. I think it's like the 4th hole, and I can't remember on this one if they say this one or that one, but basically there's a ton of adjustability, and you can see how thick this subframe is, all the steel. You can see how beefy the welds are, and just the attention to detail, this nice cutout Rock Offroad logo, and then going up over the drive shaft, just beautiful metalwork here, really beefy welds. I love this thing. Everybody that sees it is like, man, you know, and then you pick it up. When it was on the workbench, you pick it up and you go, wow, this thing's really heavy. It's definitely beefy. So, you know, this helps a lot to stiffen these weak unibody frames, especially when it's working in tandem with the Rock Offroad front long arm kit with the 3-piece subframe, which is also really beefy. So I love these kits. They're awesome. The installation instructions are pretty good, and goes on as expected. The only thing I ran into is up here in this valley above the drive shaft. You can see this lip right here. There was one of those back under here, and this whole thing, as you jack it up, will self-center as long as you beat this one in, you know, underneath here. And check for any screws that are hanging down through the floor pan here. You know, grind those down or cut those off if you need to. Just make sure that it's not hitting anything. You want it to self-center all the way up flush in here, and you'll know when you get it right. And like I said in the beginning, just make sure you take your time and really get it centered, really get it lined up. I'm real particular about stuff. I get the measuring tape out, I double, triple check everything, so this thing is on there perfectly even left to right, and perfectly measured from front to back on each side too. So like I said, the next step will just be taking these short arms off one at a time, connecting the long arms, and then I'll go down and get a full professional alignment, and should be good to go. So I'm really excited. Check out ironrockoffroad.com for this kit. It's going to run you about $1,000 for the full kit with the subframe, the hardware, and the upper and lower control arms fully adjustable. The uppers are not adjustable, but again, you have the adjustability in the subframe. So check them out. Great products. I've got tons of Iron Rock stuff on this Jeep. Really been happy with all of it. They make good stuff. It's very beefy. Another thing I wanted to mention about the Iron Rock Offroad subframe for the rear long arms, you can see it's got a nice valley here for exhaust. However, that does not line up with the factory exhaust. You do have to do some modification. What I went ahead and did at this time is I just went ahead and cut my exhaust off right after the catalytic converter. I had a big old Flowmaster 40 series. There was no way it was going to fit in here, so I just cut it off for now, and it sounds awesome. It's not too loud where I think I'm going to have a problem with the cops. It sounds really good, and it still runs good and everything. So what I'm going to do is have my exhaust shop just weld a turn down, basically a pipe that's kind of bent down and then cut even so I don't lose any ground clearance, just so it's not blowing back on all the nice powder coating on the subframe. But you will most likely have to cut or alter your exhaust to get this subframe bolted on. Next thing I'm going to show you is some work that I did on the rocker panels and a couple other things, so stay tuned for that video. Again, if you haven't already, make sure you like the video and subscribe for more. I've got videos of this Jeep, everything that's been done to it and everything that's going to be done to it will be covered, so make sure you subscribe, and also check out projectzj.com for all the videos related to this Jeep. Alright guys, have a good one. See ya.